Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am your host. As always, apologies for the little bit of a late start. Sometimes you move, and your microphone gets turned all the way down, and you log in, and you're like, "What the hell? Can't hear anything." So, appreciate the patience today. Happy to talk some ball with my guys here today, Tyler and Alex. Tyler, we'll start with you, man. How are you doing today?
Doing wonderful. I just started my first week of student teaching this week in Orange County, so that's going well. They haven't kicked me out yet. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, they everybody's desperate for teachers nowadays, so I'm sure you won't get kicked out anytime soon. But best of luck with that. So, Alex is here as well, man. Alex, how you doing tonight?
Doing good.
Doing good. JC can absolutely take your ankles. I will make that sacrifice for you.
All three of us should contribute a little bit to just one ankle, and we can save JC for week one.
Yeah, so obviously we are here to talk about the JC Jackson news. We're also going to talk about the return of Kenneth Murray, some of the latest roster cuts, news and notes from practice the last few days, and also preview things to watch for in the Saints preseason game. So first and foremost, an update on Mr. JC Jackson, as everybody knows who's here in the chat. Had surgery yesterday on an ankle issue. Ian Rappaport initially reported that it was a minor scope. He should be back pretty soon. And then today we finally got some clarification on why it happened now as opposed to previously, because this is something that he's kind of dealt with, throughout pretty much his whole life, it sounded like. So I guess it recently flared up about 2.5 weeks ago. Brandon Staley said that they tried to work through it. They tried to rehab it. They tried to do some pain injection shots, and it didn't really work out. So they decided, they meaning the team and JC, that it was better to handle this now, clean up some of the discomfort, and then, of course, kind of deal with it as opposed to playing through the whole season with this kind of ankle injury. So that's the latest in terms of JC's ankle injury. Alex, we'll start with you in terms of your reaction to this. Now that we have some clarity, what are kind of your takeaways from JC's ankle surgery?
Yeah, I mean, their clarifications make sense, right? Obviously, they kind of wanted surgery to be a last potential option, and hope through injections and other methods that it would just kind of rehab its way out of it. At the same time, if we're at a 2 to 4 week time frame for JC recovering post surgery now, and this pain started flaring up 2.5 weeks ago as an issue, I do wonder, given how safe the Chargers are, tend to be with sports performance and all of these other sorts of things, why it wasn't given more consideration, a week ago or even 2 weeks ago, when it seemed like the treatments kind of weren't helping for him to get the surgery then. And then obviously he would be, definitely ready by week one, maybe even ready the week before the season if we're functioning off of that 2 to 4 week timeline. I do also question the Chargers being kind of radio silent for 5 days on it. And then, JC obviously playing through pain in these practices for 2 weeks well before this announcement. So I do think the communication was a little bit weird in terms of how the Chargers dealt with this, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be a long-term injury for him. It was a, non-invasive scope, as the team says. So I don't think there's anything to worry about long-term, but obviously you want JC on the field against the Raiders. You want him on the field against the Chiefs, because their chances of winning those games are lower without him, right? I mean, Michael Davis probably can get the job done. You could probably have him in ASJ as CB1 or 2 for 2 games if necessary, or 1 game. But they signed him for a reason, and so for him to be dealing with this injury, and you just hope it doesn't linger on as an issue potentially during the season. So unfortunate news, bad break for the Chargers and bad break for JC, obviously.
Yeah, I'll definitely wait. Like me personally, I will wait until kickoff week 1 to actually judge this decision, because if he comes back, the week of that game and he's practicing and everything was just planned perfectly, no problem. And I am encouraged today. Yesterday, everyone was talking about it being minor, no big deal, but still 2 to 4 weeks. But today, Brandon Staley saying, it all depends on how fast the wound heals. So when the wound heals, he'll be out there. If the wound heals quickly, it could be on the low side. So the good news is, and he reiterated several times, it's not like an injury. They just had to get
Right.
this done. So JC Jackson, he's been in Orange County for a while. We're known for our boob jobs and whatnot, and he got a little cosmetic surgery. So, he got it done. It sounds like the wound will be healed pretty quickly and all should be fine. I'm okay with this for now, and then we'll see. But we'll see. If he misses week 1 because of this, and he's known about this, then yeah, I'll backtrack and say, okay, what the hell were we doing here? But if everything works out according to plan, no problem.
Sure. I guess there was a theory going around that he has or had 6 toes and that this was him removing a 6th toe. Jeff Miller of the LA Times, of course, debunked that theory today. So we know that JC Jackson did not have a 6th toe.
Good to know.
I like the way that Brandon Staley worded it, right? And that this is not necessarily a long-term thing, that this is, purely a lifestyle thing. And, obviously I wish this would have, happened sooner. But I mean, he's played with it for the last few years. He's kind of dealt with the pain and the fact that this man was just kind of, racking up interceptions like nobody's business with whatever this issue was in his ankle. I think says a lot to him. Or says a lot about him, I should say. I think, obviously he could certainly be back for week 1, but I think we do have to talk a little bit about like what this does for the short term of this defense. And, like Alex mentioned, obviously you hope that he's out there for the Raiders game. You hope that he's out there for the Chiefs game. Anything past the Chiefs game would be more than the 4-week diagnosis, if you will. So there is that to consider. But Tyler, what do you kind of make of the way Brandon Staley can kind of shift this defense around and potentially match up with the Raiders and the Chiefs without JC Jackson?
I feel good about it as it is right now. Just please don't lose one more person. We're good. We're okay. Like, we're not the best right now if JC doesn't play, but we're okay. Sounds like Derwin today. He went and he had a pass breakup versus Everett, then almost an interception versus Allen, and then a sack the next play or whatever in a 3-down series. So he will solve a lot of problems for you. That's why they're paying him even more. So I think that you're okay there. I'm okay with Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. starting. Callahan's been great. All good. As long as we don't lose another person, I feel good. I feel like there's enough players in the secondary to hold down the fort. Will it be great without JC Jackson? Maybe not, but I think you can do enough. And frankly, I don't think yes, the strength of the Raiders is their passing attack easily. Duh. But you don't need to necessarily stop their passing attack so much to beat them. They still have a bad secondary. They still have a bad offensive line. Now, I did say that week 18 of last year and the Chargers still lost, but I do feel like the defense overall is a lot better. Storm Norton, it seems like, won't be starting anyway. So I think we're okay. I think Brandon Staley can do enough with the players that he has that will be fine.
Yeah, in terms of just the purely the secondary, right? Like presumably Asante Samuel Jr. and Michael Davis have both improved since that week 18 matchup against the Raiders. And we know for a fact that they upgraded the slot position with Bryce Callen instead of Chris Harris. And, Derwin James is back and healthy. Nasir Adderley back and healthy, presumably taking another step forward. Alohi Gilman kind of sounds like he's locked down the third safety spot, not recovering from a torn quad as well. So in terms of just the secondary, obviously you wish that JC was there and present for these two matchups. But in terms of who they have now in the secondary, I feel better about it than the last time we saw this secondary. And I don't know if that's really saying a lot, given how they kind of struggled with injuries and with performance overall down the stretch. So obviously, from a pure entertainment standpoint, I would love to see JC against Devontae Adams, but I feel good enough about Michael Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. About holding down the fort, at least temporarily, against those two teams. And that's even before we get to the pass rush and to the scheme that Brandon Staley can kind of work in his favor as well.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's worth pointing out that in those first 2 weeks, regardless of whether JC plays or not, Darren Waller may not play week 1, as was rumored this week. And then you have a Chiefs team that's going to be still figuring out that offense post Tyreek Hill. So if you're looking for 2 matchups to have now, I guess, while JC Jackson potentially isn't there, it would probably be the early stage, rivalry games against the Raiders and the Chiefs, as opposed to obviously later in the year when things get a little bit more dire. And also, I think the way that Brandon Staley kind of works his defenses anyway, I think a lot of people are going to hone in on like J.C. Jackson versus Adams and that potentially being off the table now. But I mean, we had Jalen Ramsey versus Devontae Adams in a playoff game, and they covered one another maybe 5 snaps, a couple of years ago when Brandon Staley was defensive coordinator of the Rams. So I would expect him to employ a lot of zone heavy looks that probably get Michael Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. involved. If J.C. Jackson isn't to play, it's not like Brandon Staley views this as a one-on-one defense, so to speak, where it's only going to be J.C. Jackson out there. So I think the Chargers obviously can, weather the storm here with this J.C. Jackson injury. And I think considering how they play anyway, and as well as, I guess you want to say the things that the Raiders and the Chiefs are going through right now, I don't want to say it cancels out because, obviously JC is the number 1 corner, but it can make things a little bit better for the Chargers. Now, like Tyler said, if the depth starts to wane thinner, right, now we have a problem because obviously, you have Asante Samuel Jr.'s kind of like injury history. If Michael Davis gets banged up, because they just waived, even I know a lot of people aren't going to want Tavon Campbell to play, even if he didn't get waived with the injury designation yesterday. Sure. Tavon Campbell was someone who had, starting experience and someone who probably, had he not gotten injured, would have made the roster, right? So the fact that you don't have him, you have Dean Leonard and John Taylor, guys who are rookie corners. It's going to get thin there. Obviously, Bryce Callahan's your slot, but really JC is the only injury that they can afford for a very short period of time, because the longer you go down that list in terms of who they have, it gets dicier.
Yeah, a lot of people obviously not a fan of Tavon Campbell, but I think he was a good, CB4, CB5 to have. I certainly still would be more comfortable playing Campbell than I would with Dean Leonard at this particular point in their respective careers. So, it is important to point out, I've gotten this question a lot. The Tavon Campbell situation is unique of itself. It has nothing to do with JC Jackson. He was also injured, dealing with a knee injury the last few weeks. So I do expect him to reach a settlement with the team and essentially stay on the team. And while he deals with this injury, essentially he's just going to be on IR up until, he gets healthy. So we'll see what happens there. And we'll talk about some of the other cuts. But like Alex was mentioning, I think you do kind of see a shift schematically with this kind of news, right? You probably play less man-to-man coverage, play more zone coverage. Kevin Koenig pointed out in the chat, maybe put Derwin James on Devontae Adams a little bit more, especially if Darren Waller is not playing in that game, which, that's been a very weird situation to keep an eye on. I think he's only practiced like 1 time all training camp, which, isn't necessarily the end of the world, but, he hasn't been healthy. He's been going to WNBA games instead of practices. So it's just a little strange there, but I trust Brandon Staley. I trust Derwin. I trust Asante and Michael Davis to hold their own. I trust Bryce Callahan to be better against Hunter Renfrow than Chris Harris was. So I feel okay about the first game. It really is honestly the second game, I think, is where you probably feel JC's absence a little bit more, dealing with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense, I should say.
First of all, would absolutely co-sign and love to see Derwin James versus Devontae Adams. If nothing else that I'm at the game, I'd love to see that. I'm trying to look up now how often Derwin James was used outside last year for the Chargers.
It was only 10 snaps. I think I looked at this recently. Yeah. And most of that was against the Cowboys when they had him covering CeeDee Lamb in that matchup.
Which might be fine if Devontae Adams will play a lot from the slot as well, but that might be Renfro's role, I would assume, or Waller. So,
yeah. So we'll see. Obviously, we'll keep you guys updated as much as we can in terms of JC's health. Hopefully, this is just the 2-week situation. The first game is obviously, I think, 18 days away as of today, 19 as of the surgery, or I guess it would be 20 from the surgery. He had surgery Monday, right?
I thought it was over the weekend, no?
I don't know. Anyways, we'll see. All right, next up on the docket today, we have to talk about Kenneth Murray returning to practice, getting ramped up into the process a little bit faster than I would have thought. He only participated in individual drills on Monday. But yesterday and today, he has participated in full team drills. It sounds like the team still kind of expects Kyle Van Noy and Drew Tranquil to be the starters, at least while Murray kind of acclimates himself and gets fully healthy. But fantastic news individually for Kenneth Murray that he is back. Tyler, what do you make of his journey back to this team, and what do you kind of expect his role to be this year?
Ooh, the second part's more interesting, but I'll get to the first part. I'm happy to see him back out there and hear that he's back out there. Seems like he's a great mindset. Revenge does wonders for the will to live, right? And he wants to get out there, and he knows everything that people are saying about him, the adversity he faced on and off the field, the injuries. He's taking all that and using that as fuel. And sure, every player says that, but I feel like, I don't know, Murray's always felt like this reserved, kind of like kinder person, and he is, like, he definitely is. So to see maybe a switch maybe in him to just change things instead of thinking so much or worrying, it just sounds like he's going to hunt. I hope. I'm kind of guessing here, obviously, based off a couple quotes, but I hope that mentality switch is just different for him. And I think it could be. As far as his role, this is the $1 million question.
Sure.
It's the $1 million question, because you have a Staley guy at Mike right now, where usually it was, Kaiser wasn't a Staley guy. Kyle Van Noy is. So you can get rid of Kaiser White because A, you don't pay those guys anyway. B, not really a Staley guy. Kyle Van Noy is a Staley guy. So do you kick him out now to more edge? Now, do you not keep Jamal Davis because you don't need that extra guy? Davis has earned that right to be there. Is he will linebacker? Do you put him over Tranquil? Do you ramp him up? I don't know. I really don't know. I think the best case scenario for everyone to win, except Drew Tranquil, is Kyle Van Noy and Kenneth Murray on the field together. That's just how I think it is. If at some point they feel like Kenneth Murray is a better coverage guy halfway through the year, maybe he can take some responsibilities as that dime linebacker that Kyle Van Noy probably has to start the year. But I think if you're just thinking base 3-4 or 4-2-5 or whatever, I think that the best way for everyone to work with the most talent, I think, and really what the whole team wants to do moving forward, is Kyle Van Noy, Kenneth Murray. I think that's just the best thing you can do. I do think Drew Tranquil was better and is better, but you got to get Kenneth Murray involved. But you can't take Kyle Van Noy off the field, so get both of them out there.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Kenneth Murray's injury recovery timetable being, 4 to 6 weeks. He'd come back like the week before the Raiders game on the long end of that. So the fact that he is back, a whole 2.5 weeks prior to that Raiders game, enough time to get ramped up potentially, even if he's not going to be one of the top 2 linebackers in that game, just to get ramped up back into that role. And then, we'll see how his role, like Tyler said, potentially changes throughout the year with Kyle Van Noy and all the other players in the linebacker room as well. The role question, yeah, that's the one that's difficult to answer. Like Tyler said, I do eventually think they want to make Kenneth Murray the starting middle linebacker and then see kind of what happens with Kyle Van Noy, whether he, kind of matriculates back to edge or, they sort of do a 1-2 combo with them in that middle linebacker room. And then have your Reader and your Tranquil as your depth pieces who are still going to see pretty decent amounts of playing time. But I'll be curious to see what they do with that, and particularly how quickly they ramp Kenneth Murray up back into things, especially considering how long his absence has been from the football field in the offseason. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But in terms of, optimism on injuries, the fact that it has been 2.5 weeks, ahead of where we thought we would be kind of with Kenneth Murray, I think is really good.
Yeah, it's super encouraging to see him back already. I mean, anytime a player can come back before, the initial diagnosis of the 4 to 6 weeks is fantastic. And I just loved hearing the outlook that he was speaking with at his press conference the other day when he was talking about, adversity making a player or a person, and how you respond to that really kind of being the key thing, the key attribute that he is looking for and trying to, employ in his life. I can't imagine what it would be like to, be going through an injury and then also dealing with the loss of your brother in the middle of the season, and you're trying to figure out your role on the team, and you're trying to be an edge rusher, trying to be a linebacker. So he was really going through a lot last year. And so I'm glad to see him in a much better place this year. I'm glad to see him even on the field at this point. So, I hope that he is well, and I hope that he's playing well as well. Well as well. Wow, well, lots of wells right there. Um, in terms of his role, it sounded like yesterday in practice, the way that it was happening was that Calvin Oy and Drew Tranquil were the starters. Like I said, when Calvin Oy would move over to the edge rusher spot, which was the first time that he had done that since the spring, that's when Kenneth Murray would come onto the field. I don't know. Obviously, that's going to be the case, right? There are other ways that you can involve all three of those guys, and of course Troy Reader. So they don't necessarily have a great linebacker room, but I feel confident about the primary four players that they have in place if Kenneth Murray is back on track. So that kind of sounds like the plan. And I don't know how much they want Calvin Oy playing on the edge at this point, especially with Chris Rumpf kind of developing. And, Tyler mentioned Jamal Davis. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think there's enough defined roles for at least the three guys, Calvin Oy, Tranquil, and Kenneth Murray to play a lot and play a good amount of snaps together, not necessarily on the field at the same time, but I think they'll each have a role for sure.
Yep, absolutely agree.
All right, perhaps the biggest question mark of the offseason essentially has been decided at this point. Trey Pipkins has not formally been announced as the winner of the right tackle battle, but he has taken all the first team snaps over the last 3 days, and Storm Norton has started taking snaps at left tackle, which to me indicates that they're trying to prepare him for that swing tackle role at this point. So Brandon Staley said again today they don't want to declare a winner, but their actions are betraying them, so to speak. And so Trey Pipkins officially the starting right tackle this year. We have heard from several different people, whether that's our sources or whether that's the players themselves, the coaches, that Trey Pipkins has improved a lot from who he has been over the last couple of seasons. And it is officially time for him to go out and prove it. I will say, I haven't been there in practices, but I do feel like from the footage that I have seen, I've said this before, I feel like the relationship and communication between Zion and Trey Pipkins was just at a higher level than it was between Zion and Storm Norton. And I think Trey also played just a smidge better than Storm did during the preseason. So there was never like a true separation day between these two players, which, it is what it is, right? But Trey, I think, was just a little bit more consistent, a little bit better in each of the preseason games. And ultimately, he's the guy going forward. So just don't be terrible, and I'm cool with it. And like I tweeted this out yesterday, anything less than 45 pressures and a pass blocking efficiency rating of 95.5 or higher is a big, big win for this team. And I think Trey can get to those numbers, but, again, got to wait and see what he does on the field first.
I'm glad we followed the natural progression of how this was expected to go. I'm not surprised. Like, if Storm Norton were the starter, and I guess maybe he could have earned it, but it seemed like the entire way this was for Trey Pipkins to take. And so for him to, in theory, improve, and you say he looks improved, and Duke Manyweather says he's improved, and I think he does look improved to a certain extent. That's great. Like, we knew that everyone was high on him. Everyone wanted Trey to get this. Obviously, he did. You did the interview with Daniel Popper, Haley Elwood. It was time to take this job. And boy, it took a long time for this project to develop. Maybe he's still not developed, but at least he finally got where he should be, which is a starting tackle for a team, winning the job officially and being a starting tackle, not because somebody else got hurt. Again, not a great set of competition with him, Storm Norton, Foster Sarrell, Bailey, whatever. Yeah. Didn't have to do a whole lot to win this job, but he still did get better. He did everything that we could have wanted him to do. Like, whatever he was before, he got better. And that's really all we could ask for him at this point. Maybe the Chargers are setting him up to fail because they really should have taken a right tackle at some point or signed a right tackle. But you know what? He's earned the right to start based on who he was competing against. They drafted him to do this, and now he's starting. I hope it works out well. The bar of 45 pressures and a PBE of 95.5 is quite a low bar, but you know what? Again, I will give or take that. Like, that's fine. That is improvement, and that little bit of improvement in one game could get them into the postseason. If that's all Trey Pipkins has for us, is being one game better than Storm Norton last year, they could end up in the postseason because of it.
I'd like to congratulate Trey Pipkins for confirming the coaching staff's priors of instead of winning a competition, because that is to me what this sounds like. I mean, the Chargers didn't go grab a right tackle in free agency. They didn't grab a right tackle in the draft. I mean, I'm Jamari Sallier, but that could potentially be a thing in the future, but obviously not right now. It's just a weird place to be in because, yeah, he did the work with Duke. We think in theory he's better. He's looked better. But Trey Pipkins never really won this competition because there was never a competition to win.
Yeah.
Storm Norton played his last snap starting for the Chargers in a non-depth backup role when Max Crosby ate his lunch on national television. I mean, there was no chance that Storm Norton was going to be starting right tackle for the Chargers again after that. So, and obviously we know from last year that Trey Pipkins got the eyes of people in the building in those two games that he started towards the end of the regular season, which he looked good. I mean, obviously there was a lot of help given to him in those games, and the Chargers kind of like reconfigured things around Trey Pipkins. So it wasn't necessarily like, let's just throw him at right tackle kind of game, and the Chargers kind of designed their offense and looks around that. But I'm happy for Trey Pipkins. I hope it works out, because if it does work out, then you can kind of re-sign Trey Pipkins potentially going forward to be your right tackle of at least the next couple of years. And you don't have to go diving into free agency or diving into the offseason next year, just figuring out what to do with your hole there. And I hope we're not talking about Trey Pipkins the way that we're talking about, or that with the way that we did talk about 2021 Storm Norton. But at the same time, there just is this feeling in my chest where watching the preseason games, hearing everything we heard out of training camp, et cetera, that Trey Pipkins didn't really win this job. He just got it because it was a no contest.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was better than Storm Norton, like I said, but to me, it wasn't like a clear separation, a clear win. It was just like he was slightly better than what Storm Norton was, at least as a pass blocker. I think, Chargers in I think that's it. That is asking, is Pickens better at pass protection or run blocking? I think he's better at run blocking than Storm Norton for sure. And I think his athleticism really shows up in that department. I think you're able to do more things with Trey because of his explosiveness and athleticism. The execution wasn't super clean, but he gets out on that screen block for Josh Palmer, and is able to kind of lead that at least get out in space and be in position to make a play. And I think there were a couple clips that I tweeted out from the Broncos game from last year where Trey is pulling out on the perimeter on a counter run block. And I think you can kind of see that be a bigger difference than the pass protection. So I don't, like I said, I don't think Trey like outright won this job. Like it wasn't an emphatic victory by Trey, but I do think he was better than Storm, particularly as a run blocker. And so just for reference's sake, why I came up with that specific bar, 45 total pressures was 10th most in the league. It was not second most in the league. So just be outside of the top 10 and I'm cool with it. Pass blocking efficiency, or bottom 10, I should say. Pass blocking efficiency, again, 95.5 was like right at the cutoff between bottom 10 and not bottom 10. So just don't be one of the worst tomato cans in the league as a pass protector, and I'm cool with it.
I guess I do want to bring this up, even though we probably all say the same thing. If Pipkins goes down, because we don't really talk about that as much.
Yeah.
It's still Storm Norton at right tackle, I would imagine, if Slater is healthy. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. I keep on saying this, like this team really believes in continuity, and they will not break up the left tackle, left guard pairing of Rashawn Slater and Matt Filer unless they absolutely have to. So to me, that is Trey goes down, Storm goes down. We don't really have any other option. Okay, let's get Matt Filer out of right tackle. So that's the situation, and that's, to me, how it's been from day one. So missed a couple super chats earlier. Of course, our guy Renee crushing it in the chat every single day. We do this, is always doing a super chat. So appreciate that one. Diego Rangel as well did a super sticker. So appreciate that. I think he meant to attach this comment into his super chat. He says, I think Vato can hold it down. I do agree, at least for a few games. And then we had that recent one from Michael Lopez. Again, somebody that always is in the super chat, so really appreciate that. Given a week 1 prediction already, says Chargers 28, Raiders 17. Trenches matter, and the Raiders are pretty mediocre there on both sides of the ball, outside of Jones and Crosby. And then he also says MVP Herb. So I appreciate the prediction. I do agree with that second sentence, though. I do think the Raiders are pretty weak on the trenches, which is something that we'll discuss more as the game gets closer.
Would be huge to hold them to 17 points. That would show me that this defense is, working.
Yes, and a super chat from Brent Kincaid as well. We got Callahan to shut down Renfro, put Davis on Adams, and we're good. I don't know if Callahan will shut down Renfro, but he'll definitely be better against him than Chris Harris was last year.
Yes, by default.
Low bar to clear. I mean, that kind of sounds like the slot cornerback version of 95.5 efficiency. But yeah, yes. Put Davis on Adams and we're good, though. I don't know about that, but okay.
Yeah, I don't know about good, but I don't share the same opinion of everybody yesterday that was like, oh, Devontae is going to go for 200 yards easily now. It's like, well, there's other players on the team besides JC, and there's a head coach who's a very smart defensive coach for a reason. So, I'm right there in the middle between we're good with Davis and 200 yards easily from Adams. But we'll talk about that as we get closer for sure.
Mm-hmm. Trying to see how many games Derek Carr had over 200 yards total last year.
I think it was like 3 or 4.
Okay, it was a lot more than I would have guessed, but I certainly don't think it was 200 yards to one receiver either.
I saw this clip from NFL Live today where Ryan Clark was talking about how dangerous the Raiders offense is, and like Derek Carr is a top 5 quarterback talent. And I do agree, like to a certain extent, that Derek Carr is underrated. But it's so funny to me, like every time people talk about the Raiders offense, nobody talks about the offensive line ever in any good sense. And it's just like
Chargers.
It's a thing. Like you have to talk about the offensive line. And you can have all the pass catchers in the world, but it doesn't matter if your quarterback is on his back. I mean, like they won the game, right? But look at what the Titans did to the Bengals offense because they could not block their defensive front. And that's a thing. And Jamar Chase was the best player on the field that game. So, it goes both ways. Like you have to talk about the offensive line. Like it's cool that they have 3 great skill players and a good quarterback. But I mean, their offensive line is so bad that Thayer Munford, their 7th round pick, is going to be starting over Alex Leatherwood, their former 1st round pick. And it's some undrafted free agent is starting over Dylan Parham, who they took in the 3rd round this year. It's bad. It's really bad.
Leatherwood, man. We talked about him last year as a sneaky pick at 13, just not realistically, but like a sneaky pick. And boy, I can't believe what happened. I mean, but Sewell looks great. Slater, all pro, no problem. After that,
great things about Darisaw, though.
What's that?
Darisaw's crushing it in camp, apparently.
Oh, well, I feel good about that. I forgot about him.
Yeah, well, okay. But everybody else in that class is like Liam Eichenberg. I mean, all these teams, right? They're switching all these guys' positions and things like that. It's been a complete disaster, but I'm super grateful that the Chargers got Rashawn Slater. All right, so we'll talk about the roster cuts here from this week, and then of course, the Chargers have to get to 53 next week, which we'll do our final roster prediction later in the week. But we do have to talk about the recent round of cuts. On Monday, the Chargers announced that they cut James McCourt as well as Cameron Hunt. McCourt, obviously the backup kicker. And hey, that guy has got himself a starting job already. Apparently, he did enough in 2 extra point attempts in the preseason to earn himself the Jacksonville Jaguars starting kicker position. So we'll see how that one goes. I tweeted that out, and everybody, rightfully so, had some very funny comments to say about a former Chargers kicker going to the Jaguars.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Does sound familiar. And then the Chargers, of course, waived Tavon Campbell and Damon Lloyd, and I forget the other one right now off the top of my head. Those two waived with injury distinctions. Oh, and Ty Shelby. Ty Shelby was the other one, the edge rusher, undrafted free agent. So the Chargers roster currently stands at 80. Alex, anything you want to mention about those particular 5 cuts?
Yeah, like I could give you the whole Josh Lambo left the Chargers and got good joke, but instead I'm going to give you the joke that Doug Peterson will not kick James McCord in the leg. Anyway, no, I mean I think these cuts obviously James McCord, there was never any real kicker competition that was gonna happen for the Chargers. It was Dustin Hopkins' job. Tavon Campbell, I mean, being waived with the injury designation is a little bit, I don't want to say surprising, but it is playable depth that I think hurts the Chargers more, that he's not going to be back at least for a pretty long time, potentially on this roster. Maybe not back at all. We don't know at this stage what his future really is with the team. So I think that is an unfortunate loss for them. Everyone else kind of makes sense in this round of cuts. No one really that really catches my eye in terms of a cut at this point. I think all the real tough decisions are, of course, going to be after the final preseason game when the Chargers, kind of get into the swing of things and make their final decisions there. Of course, the fate of Michael Bandy is, what every Chargers fan seems to want to know on this final roster, and whether they'll keep 6 receivers or not. But at this point, nothing that really stood out to me in this round of cuts, partially because I feel like we're only really debating maybe 3 or 4 spots on the final roster at this point, because the Chargers are such a deep team.
Yeah, not much to add here. I was surprised at first seeing Tavon Campbell let go like that, but you see the waiver designation, injury designation. So I understand. I guess it seems like Dean Leonard has that job then. It seems like Dean Leonard's going to make the team, which is great. I've never seen a player not look so great like that, but also win the job, except for right tackle. This past offseason.
Whoa. Trey was not that bad.
You weren't at that Cowboys practice. I'll tell you what, man. That was as bad as that Rams game for Leonard. But good for Leonard, I guess, is my takeaway from this.
Yeah, I am curious to see if they potentially sign another cornerback. After the roster cuts happen. Dean Leonard kind of nursing a hamstring injury at this point. It sounds like he's not going to play on Saturday. So I'm very curious to see how the Chargers kind of handle the preseason game with this few of corners on the roster. So I'm curious to see if they do end up making a hopefully better version of Eric Banks signing for the secondary.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the Tavon Campbell cut, and pretty much, I don't want to say ensuring, but making it pretty likely that Dean Leonard and Jasir Taylor probably make the final roster now. I think that shows you that the Chargers are kind of willing to let Dean Leonard work through some of the things he's been going through in the preseason and let him develop on the back end of that roster, as opposed to, what we talked about earlier in the offseason, which was maybe stashing him on the practice squad or going through some of these other possibilities for him. They really believe in his upside and what he could potentially be in the future, and still want him potentially on the final piece of this roster. Maybe he won't be active every game day, of course, because the Chargers aren't going to, just bring all their corners to a game. But at the same time, I do think it's interesting to note that Dean Leonard, probably makes the final roster now. And obviously we'll see about Jasir Taylor as well as some other people. But they still have faith in him, of course. It's been a rough 2 preseason games, but still a lot to look forward to, I think, from what you're seeing from the Chargers coaching staff and their actions towards Dean Leonard.
Yeah, absolutely. I should clarify here that they have signed Michael Jaquette. I'm gonna guess that's how you say that name. I don't know, but I'm curious to see if they do end up signing another corner after that. Like a Fabian Moreau, who was cut today, is somebody that I think could, that kind of player to fill the Tavon Campbell role. It would be interesting to me. So
they could do what every NFL team has been doing for insider trading and trade for Ugo Amadi. I mean, he's available. He could be traded a third time in off season.
That poor guy, man, gets traded twice in the span of 10 days. Just Just brutal. Probably like had just gotten an apartment in Philly too, and now he's off to another team. So
I'd love
brutal.
to see like what the Hard Knocks, not the Hard Knocks version of like following the Lions or whatever, but just the Hard Knocks version of his offseason. I think that
Yeah.
would be entertaining television.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, we're going to do our final roster predictions, but it sounds like Jossier Taylor and Dean Leonard will kind of round out their cornerback position room out after the top four. So, kind of expected that, but obviously those guys had to earn it. And Jaw Taylor's been really good, man. I've been very impressed with Jaw Taylor from what we've seen so far. Is fantastic as a run defender, blitzer, makes a lot of great reads. So, I'm excited about him. Obviously, hope Bryce Callahan can stay healthy, but I feel okay about Josh Taylor getting some slot snaps if need be.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think that's going to do it in terms of the roster cuts. There are only 5, and then the one addition that I mentioned. So, Chargers have their final preseason game on Friday against the Saints. They're doing a little road trip. I think they're leaving tomorrow evening is what it sounds like. So Alex, what's one thing that you're hoping to, we've gotten a lot of clarity on certain roster battles, so I don't really know where your head's at, but what is one thing you're looking forward to watching on Friday in terms of the guys kind of vying for roles and roster spots?
Looking to see who we cut after the game because we're going to keep 3 quarterbacks and 4 running backs. I'm very excited to see who will have a breakout game. Michael Bandy goes for 100 yards and 5 touchdowns. You know, you you have everyone balling out in the defensive line room. Poor Braden Fajoko and everyone else, and just somehow the Chargers' depth is gonna kill them because they're gonna make poor roster decisions, and I can already see us getting the hate on that episode. But on a positive side, I do want to see the wide receiver room, play, one more time. Get to see Michael Bandy, potentially make that final spot. I'd also like to see the running backs again because, right, they're kind of coming off of a dud game against the Cowboys. So, I mean, if they can sort of get a rebound game, we could sort of get a little bit more clarity on what Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller's roles will be heading into the season. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And then I just think that you're probably looking at some of the, not even really the roster cut guys at this point. I mean, we kind of already talked about how like Dean Leonard and Jaw Taylor and some of those guys are making the roster now because of the cuts they made this week at this point. But just seeing how some of those guys adapt to, this being their final, really big push for some playing time. I'd like to see Dean Leonard have a rebound game and sort of go into the regular season strong. Same with some of the other players that have struggled in the preseason as well. And the biggest thing I'm honestly watching is just kind of the players that I think are going to be really important for the Chargers during the regular season. Jerry Tillery and Christian Covington have unfortunately to this point pretty much been zeros in training camp in the preseason, and I'd like to see more from them considering not that Christian Covington will start. I mean, Jerry Tillery probably will, but both of them are going to probably play significant snaps throughout the season, and you just like to see a little bit more than what they've given you this preseason to this point.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with that same mentality of looking for guys to step up that really kind of just were given the jobs or are just walking nicely right into a job. Like if you're going to keep Larry Roundtree, go off for 100 yards, man. Like go show me that you deserve to be on the roster. Not that he doesn't deserve to be. I shouldn't say that, but if you're going to keep 4 running backs and it's going to
You
be
can
Larry
say
Roundtree,
that. It's okay. He's been really bad this preseason in training camp. It's okay.
It feels very mean, and people think I'm mean, so I'll be nice. And even honestly, one of the ones that I do need to see step up because he is definitely going to make the team, but they still might keep another person at his position or even 2 because maybe he's not doing so well. It's JT Woods. He didn't have a great game last week, and he hasn't really been great so far most of the offseason. A lot of flashes, don't get me wrong. The traits are on display. You see some good things, but it's been a work in progress. And that last game was not great, both on defense and on special teams. So, they might have to keep, and this might bump off your Bandy, your Fajoko, your whoever, a 5th safety, A, because of some injuries, but B, because they don't feel so great. about where JT Woods is at right now. Maybe they do. I don't really buy that they would, but they might because they have to. I mean, there was 106 picks in between Zion Johnson and Isaiah Spiller, and they had one pick, right? It was JT Woods. That was it. Over 100 picks between two players. They went with the safety with a ton of trades. And I got to see something. I got to see a little bit more something. Maybe he's a baller in the regular season. Sure, that'd be great. Based on what we've seen so far, it's definitely a bit worrisome. So I want to both see him step up just to see him step up, but also I'm not saying I don't want Alohi Gilman to make the roster, but you don't need a fifth safety. So I'd love to see, Mark Webb be healthy in some capacity. And then JT Woods look good. You can go, okay, I feel good about this room. Alohi, sorry, man, just the roster's the way it is. Can't keep you, so we'll let you go. Maybe come back to the practice squad. And then let that open up a spot for somebody else. But if JT Woods goes out there, doesn't look good, and Mark Webb's still kind of unhealthy, and I guess Gilman's still hurt anyway, and then we got to keep 5 safeties. Like I don't feel good about that, or the 3 quarterbacks, or the 4 running backs. So I'm actually surprised we've had this entire journey of not liking their roster decisions and starting to feel good, and we're probably going to end up right back where we started with how we feel about their roster decisions, because that's just the decisions that they're making.
Yeah, I'm right there with you in terms of the safety position. That to me is kind of like where I'm really focusing in on this week. Mark Webb, man, has not been able to stay on the field. I think he's practiced like 3 times or 4 times in this training camp practice. Hasn't played in either preseason game. Alohi Gilman has been fine, it sounds like, in training camp, made some good plays as a run defender, and that's who he is. We know that's kind of where he excels. JT Woods really kind of struggling with more so his confidence in his athletic ability and his technique than like actually being in the right position or not. And, Raheem Lane, like, this is his final chance to say, hey, like, I am better than Mark Webb. I am healthier than Mark Webb. Maybe, while you're dealing with JT Woods and his, growing pains, Raheem Lane can kind of, swoop in and convince them to keep him. And I could see a world where they keep 5 safeties while they're kind of waiting for JT Woods to, kind of find his stride a little bit more. But of course, somebody has to earn that role. Right now, Mark Webb can't stay on the field. And so if Raheem Lane can show some things, then I think that really affects the roster construction. So we've heard him have some really good practices. He played really well in the first preseason game, I felt like. Didn't really get a ton of opportunities in the second game. So if there's like a player in a position group that I'm really focusing in on in this game, it is the safety position, and specifically JT Woods and Raheem Lane. So that's kind of where my head's at on defense. On offense, I do want to see, of course, another Michael Vanda game. Might be his last in terms of making the final roster, but give me some tight end action in this one as well. Sage Surratt has been a pleasant surprise at the position. Hunter Kampmoyer, looks like we lost Alex for a second. Hunter Kampmoyer been a pretty good blocker. We've heard that he's practicing as a backup long snapper. Gabe Neighbors getting switched from fullback to tight end all of a sudden. So in terms of the 2 position groups I'm watching most, it is safety and tight ends for me.
I at least feel like tight end is the one group that we're moving. Like, I think if they had to make a choice, that's not the 4-person group or the extra person group. But yeah, I would love to see something. I love that Eric Krummenhoek posted that, he was a Chargers fan growing up. So cool. Grew up a Chargers fan. Then he had a picture of him catching a pass in the preseason in powder blue. I mean, that's awesome, but he's not making the team. But
he can stick around on the practice squad.
I think he will. I think he'll absolutely be just kind of that next Kampmoyer sort of guy who just, is elevated back and forth maybe or whatever. Yeah, would love to see Sage Surratt breakout game or something. And maybe, I guess to a certain extent, I would love to see what they do with Easton Stick this game, because first game, pretty easy design rollouts, a lot of handing the ball off. This game, the last game, sure, they handed the ball off more, but they tried to push it a bit more. So does this game, do they get back to what Easton Stick does well? Do they challenge him again from the pocket? Love to see what they do with him there, because again, he's making the roster. So show me something. You've got 1 touchdown so far in the preseason through the air. Let's see a little bit more.
It won't happen. Chase Daniel is going to play in this game, probably going to start just based on how they've done some things. But I almost would like to see them just give Stick the whole game. and just, say, hey, like, go show us this is your final opportunity.
They should.
To earn the backup spot. I mean, we all know what Chase Daniel is and what he isn't at this point. So I would like to see them kind of give Easton Stick the Bryce Perkins treatment a little bit. But obviously it's not going to happen.
The thing about giving someone the Bryce Perkins treatment is that they have to show that they're capable of being a QB2 in this league. And so that is something that Easton Stick has not shown that he's consistently capable of doing. I mean, like, I don't know. I would love to see Easton Stick play really well or Chase Daniel play really well, but it wouldn't change my opinions on the roster construction of the fact that you only need to keep 2 quarterbacks. Easton Stick could throw 400 yards and 3 touchdowns on, Saturday or Friday, and I wouldn't really feel any different like about the fact that he shouldn't remain on the team. If he does fall out, then cut Chase Daniel. Do whatever you want to do there. But to me, that's just such an issue of just poor roster construction and keeping all 3 when you can keep one on the practice squad. So I don't know. It's not going to be like, well, man, Chase Daniel had a really great game and Easton Stick had a really great game, but we had to cut Michael Bandy and we had to cut all these players that we actually really liked and could have used in our offense in the regular season in a more meaningful capacity because we kept these guys. So I wish I could offer more positivity there, but I really can't based on what that quarterback competition has been this preseason.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Real quick, super chat again. Shout out to Renee. He says Gilman over Webb. That sounds like it's been the easier decision so far in practices. We'll see how kind of this plays out. But Elohis Gilman is going to make the roster for sure. Alex Silva, this is a painful super chat. He says they let Bandy go, he will go to New England or Tampa Bay and shine. Not be surprised if either of those teams picked him up. Although I feel like Tampa Bay probably not so much. They're generally more of a big power slot kind of team as opposed to a guy like Michael Bandy. But New England definitely a fit for sure.
Yeah, go take Julio's job.
I don't think that's quite it. Last thing here, I think Alex kind of mentioned it is the running backs. Zay Spiller not going to play in this one. So we haven't gotten to see, again, Joshua Kelly has been better, but I haven't really seen like a sweeping victory. So I would love to see Joshua Kelly get the opportunity here. But I also feel like, hey, man, like just let Roundtree and these undrafted free agents kind of carry the load in this matchup and give Joshua Kelly the night off. So, Tyler, what are you hoping to see from the running back position on Friday night?
Like good football. I would like to see them, be like this. Joshua Kelly drops that pass and he goes for 2 yards, and then this person fumbles there. I just want to see nice, consistent football. I don't know if the Saints have more defensive depth or whatever. I would like to see them just, run the ball well, look okay. So I feel good about things. But yeah, I guess Joshua Kelly, he's a running back. Like he doesn't need the touches. I know Staley says that he thought all the running backs were terrible. So he will get touches for sure. And I'd love to see him get more involved in the passing game, I guess. But he doesn't really need it. Like I would love to see Larry Roundtree, Kevin Marks, Lady Brown really take 3/4 of this game, if not, 80% of this game. See what you got. I mean, they don't know what Letty Brown and Kevin Marks Jr. can really do unless you're looking at film from their college days, because they don't get any touches in camp, in these games. It's just like, here's your drive. You have 3 rushing attempts, try to get 4 yards a carry, and that's about it. I want to see what they can actually do. There's just, with Kevin Marks Jr., there's like a certain running aesthetic that he has, even in that game, when just watching him, even if he got 2 yards, 3 yards, there's just a different wiggle something there. I would love to see that. I don't know if I get a chance to, but I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'd like to see Joshua Kelly just play one drive, really, and just put like an authoritative stamp on him being RB2, especially now that Isaiah Spiller is probably going to be out for maybe the first week of the regular season. Maybe he'll be able to be back before then. So, I mean, just seeing him play one series, get a little, wind under his legs, especially after last game. A Roundtree, Marks, and Letty Brown game is probably a real incentive for me to fast forward on NFL Plus.
I mean, there's a lot of fans out there for Letty Brown and Kevin Marks, so
I like Kevin Marks, but I don't think the coaching staff does. So why am I gonna put myself through those snaps when we're keeping 4 running backs and 3 the whole spiel?
Yeah. I don't know. There's some good running backs out there that are potentially available for little trade action, little waiver claim action. So we'll see.
Yeah, Ernest and Rojo, whatever.
Jalen Rager, wide receiver 7.
Justin
I
Jackson.
mean,
Trade for him?
Justin Jackson.
is Justin Jackson going to make it? I don't even know.
I don't.
I don't know.
He's in
Not as the
Detroit,
first
right?
2 running. Yeah, he'd have to be
Okay.
RB3 at best. Which, hey, 7 carries, 54 yards, led his team. Looked really good. Who'd have thunk?
Weird. When he's on the field, it's like he's a good football player.
Christ.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Alex, any final thoughts before we head out for the evening?
Nope. Last preseason game. Fired up and excited to get to the roster cuts episode where everyone will hate us.
Hopefully they can understand us at least a little bit. Tyler, final thoughts, man.
Everyone loves us. Just check all the comments about me being a potential racist. Just everyone loves me.
Yeah, the one minority guy on here is the racist. It's really funny. But it's all good. So the Chargers, of course, have their final preseason game on Friday. Saturday morning, we'll be going live to do our reaction to that game. I will not bore everybody with the drive-by-drive recap since nobody really liked that last time. Maybe it'll be different if they win, I guess. But we'll see. We'll have a recap, and then, of course, we will do our final roster predictions. So appreciate everybody in the chat tonight. Appreciate the super chats. You guys were crushing it, as always. If you are listening to the audio version of this, please leave a rating or a review. We really appreciate that support as well. So that's going to do it tonight. As always, bolt up.